All right, we're back for the 36th episode of the Radical Agnostic on the November 15th. We got Eddie West with us here. We got Mark. We forgot to mention our boy, the stowaway guest, Brian, man. He's at home convalescing. He's toe up from the flow up, as it were, because his toe has just undergone major surgery.
My prayers are with him.
Pray for Richter. Everybody? All right, that's our new meme. That's the theme of the show, too. Pray for Brian. He does not want your prayers. He despises the idea of God.
You need to come up with some kind of Richter scale.
Yes, for anger, maybe. Or genius, because he displays both. So we were just getting into this, so we had to hit record, of course. Campaign finance. Now, that does not sound interesting. That is not a sexy topic at all. But I did write a paper about it this week, so I know a little bit more about this stuff, and it's very relevant to this election and to American democracy at its core. So we're going to quickly smash through it and see what happens here. So, contrary to popular belief, Citizens United, this was a Supreme Court decision in 2010, and it opened the door to corporate contributions to political campaigns, in a way. But the truth is, it had already, corporations had already been allowed by some previous Supreme Court cases to contribute to expenditures in political campaigns. Now, corporations still cannot give money to a candidate more than the limit of $2,700 or whatever it is. So, contrary to popular belief, corporations can't just give Hillary Clinton $50 million. But what they can do now, since these other court cases, corporations can spend $50 million or $50 billion or any amount, it's unlimited, on campaign expenditures. So they can't be directly associated with the candidate, but they can use their corporate free speech to run ads that directly mention candidates. And that's what Citizens United gave us. Corporations could already spend on political ads, but now they can mention the candidates' names and tell you to vote for them. They can say, vote for Rubio, vote for Clinton, and don't vote for these other assholes. Now, they can spend unlimited money on running those ads. They can't.
Is that why you have candidates on the ads going, I'm Hillary Clinton and I endorse this thing or whatever?
No,
that's from her campaign. Now, that kind of thing would be paid for by her campaign, and you can only give money to that. Each individual can only give $2,700 to that. But I can make what's called a super PAC.
Can a corporation give $2,700?
Yeah, but
like
not
IBM
more.
could? Or,
yeah, and they frequently do. And all the executives could, individually, and it could add up. But what they can also do now is those corporations can make their own things called super PACs, and it's a group that's not officially affiliated with the candidate, and they can spend millions, $50 million.
PAC, though.
Political Action Group Committee. That would be PAG.
Super Action PAG.
Super PAGs.
All right, PAG.
So they're independent organizations, but like Ready for Hillary or something.
Ostensibly independent.
Yeah. And it's a really silly thin line. So essentially corporations can contribute to the candidates, but it's just technically they can't. They have to make their own super PAC and fill it with money and then make ads supporting that candidate. Or they could just be supporting a cause. They could be support Keystone XL, or oppose it. So Citizens United, all that did was say you can directly mention candidates in your super PAC ads now. You can say, vote for Hillary. The problem is, and that's already a problem, but the big thing is their justification for that decision was that unequal expenditures of money in political elections by powerful groups is not itself corrupt, and it's not an indication of corruption. And therefore, the few remaining limitations there are, like foreign nationals can't contribute to an American political campaign, and individuals can't contribute.
Wasn't that the whole thing about the Chinese giving money to Bill Clinton?
Yes.
So
now, but here's another crazy loophole, and this is what's messed up. So if you and I donate to a super PAC for Hillary, that super PAC has to disclose our names when they say who gave them money. They have to disclose the source of their income, unless it's a nonprofit organization. So a nonprofit organization, whatever that's called in the law, 501 C or something. A nonprofit can donate to a super PAC and does not have to disclose their source of their income. Nonprofits do not have to tell anyone where they get their money. So now you can have foreign nationals and corporations and people donating to nonprofits, and the nonprofit gives it to the super PAC, and no one will ever know where that money came from. And so, and they did a study on it, and super PACs with anonymous donations.
Most churches are nonprofit.
Exactly. So
churches are expressly nonprofit under the IRS's guidelines, whereas atheist organizations are treated completely differently. But please go on.
Yeah. So in other words, people, foreigners, terrorists, people can donate to nonprofits. The nonprofit can donate to the super PAC, and you'll never know who it was. And they did a study, and super PACs with anonymous donations behind them through nonprofits were 22% more likely to run negative ads. And that's the whole concept of accountability. When people know your name.
Which that, to come back to the I approve this message, that came from the McCain-Feingold Act. And it was the idea, it was an attempt to say, like, if you're going to run an attack ad, you better say, like,
who you are.
I'm Senator Ted Brinkley, and I approve this message. And
but then
they don't have to do that about
Obama's a Muslim.
But that's the PAC's idea. If it's a PAC, it's a political action committee, technically independent of the candidate. They don't have to approve that message.
But a lot of what I see, though, them doing that, I'm Hillary Clinton and I endorse this or whatever, they're not attack ads. It's just like any ad
that's
that
the point.
is like a vote for them. But they're still having that tagline at the end.
They ship the attack ads to the super PACs, so they don't have to claim responsibility for that because they're not associated with those guys officially. Okay. And it really, 2010 the decision was made. So 2012 was our first presidential election where this law was in play, and super PACs in that first one spent double what both of the parties spent. So that's a massive amount. And what that means is that, look, if you're the Koch brothers and you make a super PAC and you fill it with $1 billion, and the Republican Party doesn't even come close to that. Instead of you as a donor wanting to give money to a candidate and be in the platform of that candidate, now candidates are going to want to attract these super PACs because they're such powerful messaging sources. So the super PACs are out there and don't even have to endorse a candidate. They can say, support Keystone XL Pipeline. That's the whole PAC. That's all their commercials, and they have $100 million in it. Now, Marco Rubio might want to say, I want them to endorse me in their messages as well. So he'll say, I support Keystone XL. In other words, the politicians and the parties are now going to move towards the PACs to emulate their ideology rather than the other way around. And that's where you get this huge influence of corruption.
I disagree with you on the use of the phrase going. They've already gone there.
Right.
Well, the only thing
it's not future tense.
In a mere 3, 4, or 5 years, whatever it's been.
Now,
the only thing I don't understand is, how are the super PACs, like I said, I know churches are nonprofit, but how are super PACs collecting all these other nonprofits that are somehow doing this? Because in my mind, when I think of a nonprofit, I think of like Casa de los Niños,
And so what would happen is the CEO of Casa de los Niños would take money from the accounts.
The Koch brothers.
He gives money to a super PAC, like ready for Hillary.
Let me simplify it for him, because that's a real world example. And Casa de los Niños is probably not doing that.
No, of course not.
No, right. But I'm trying to think of a nonprofit besides a church.
I create in order to get nonprofit status, you have to assert to the IRS that you are doing. So if you're saying, I am supporting public infrastructure and I'm supporting public education on energy, that's a nonprofit.
Yep.
That nonprofit can then donate to a political action committee, which is entirely based on the Keystone Pipeline.
But how does it become does it just do you just have to have someone say that and then apply for nonprofit status?
Yeah, it's going to be written
and then
into
they
your
give it to you
bylaws
that easily?
It's
a
or
process.
do you have to
There's a process, and one of the biggest things about being a nonprofit is how your organization is structured. And really, if you're creating an organization whose real intent is just to get the money to the PAC, it's really easy to meet all the criteria.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Because, like, who are you going to pay?
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to be giving dividends to shareholders. It's not like you're going to be paying an unreasonable amount to any of your CEOs. Because their whole job is essentially money laundering.
Basically, so my question was, I was wondering if there are all these nonprofits that are actually not, don't have a physical building, don't actually have workers in them, aren't actually doing it.
Probably not. I don't know for sure, but
no work. I mean, no, there's some oversight of it, but you could just be the vice president of publicity, and I think you don't need to have a physical building.
So could I just have a PO box?
Yeah,
like an incorporation, or
because imagine if you just were a small, like I decide, Eddie West decides tomorrow he's going to create a kids literacy nonprofit. It's going to be small. People don't like me.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a building right away. So I'm going to have a P.O. box and, if I'm lucky, a website. How do you differentiate me, Eddie West, douchebag, from, Koch brother A, whose name I don't remember their names.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Huey,
Dewey.
Yeah, Huey and Dewey.
Yeah.
Humpty and Dumpty.
I think it's actually classic and diet.
They've got infinite money, but they don't... In terms of the IRS and oversight and such like that, they could set it up in the same way I do and not have a physical building. So, the IRS is always going to have to err on the side to a certain extent of caution in terms of being a dick. So, they're going to. You don't need to have a physical. You don't need to have really ramped up your nonprofit status. And fundamentally, it's all about how your organization is structured, because there are nonprofits who make no money or who aren't doing well, like who wind up having to shutter. Now, these ones probably don't have to, because they keep having that influx of money from people who want to get to the pack. But given that they're not really achieving their goal, is irrelevant to the IRS. So long as the intent is there, the structure is set up.
And to put this into context of the present campaign, you only have, to my knowledge, 2 candidates who do not participate in super PACs. So that would be Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Donald Trump, of course, because
he's got his daddy's money.
He's between $1 and $6 billion. Nobody knows.
He had to release his records. Don't we know by now?
No, personal finance records. I don't.
Yeah, no,
Forbes tries their best to nail them down, and they put him at 1.3.
Well, but there's
he claims 6.
With Trump. There's a lot of different stuff, because there's a trust, like you said, his daddy's money that was set up a long time ago, maybe even before he was born.
Right.
And so he's got that. That's why whenever people say that he filed bankruptcy, he's correct in saying, no, I did not. Because he really has not invested any of his own money in any of these businesses.
It was one of his corporations.
It's one of his,
declared bankruptcy.
Declared bankruptcy.
Right. And not just one, actually.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with the concept of the LLC and all the corporations are people concept.
Yeah.
Which comes back to what Citizens United is. The 2 big errors I personally have with that ruling are the idea of money as speech, and the idea of corporations as people.
Well, see, the people thing was already in play. That was my point from previous decisions.
Both were, really. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. Supreme Court rulings. There are some people who, when the Supreme Court rules in a way they don't like, are like, oh, the Supreme Court's garbage, and they're anti-American, and they need to be impeached, and blah, blah, blah. That happens. To my own personal experience, I could be wrong, but to my experience in the most recent decades, it's been more of a conservative thing, because I hear it all the time. My father said it about the Obamacare decision, which was rooted distinctly in precedent.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court can be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Dred Scott.
Dred Scott was right in terms of the law, in terms of the precedent.
Right, yeah,
Morally, it was wrong, but the law never has anything to do with morality.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, we still had slavery in the states at the time, so for you to be too upset about Dred Scott, which was really just an intricacies of the fact that some places have slavery, some don't. Well, we had not said as a society, is it garbage? Is it awful? Is it reprehensible? Oh, all of the above. But in terms of the law at the time, it was pretty right.
Because you got to stick to the
I will give an example similar to this case, but on a completely different subject. The state secrets privilege. Anybody know the original case that established that?
No.
World War II was the first case that established the idea of the government can have state secrets. We'd had state secrets before,
right?
But it had never really been an issue. And a plane crashed. This plane was carrying early radar technology, top secret at the time, and it crashed. And the family thought that the plane had not been adequately taken care of. They thought that the maintenance had been shitty and that it crashed because of that. But the government said, we don't have to give you any of that because state secrets and it was secrets and secrets, right? And the court deferred to the government. The court said, yeah, no, that's it's the defining ruling for state secrets. It made its own precedent. Whereas
conspiracy theorists are getting very excited right now.
And here's the thing. Decades later, that information became declassified. Long after the statute of limitations. They lost their court case anyway, so... And guess what? The plane was poorly taken care of. Right. And it had nothing to do with the state secrets. It really was. Everyone kind of thought it was probably radar, but like nobody knows because it's a secret. It was radar. It had nothing to do with the maintenance of the plane, and they completely abused it, and they won. Yeah. And the court basically said, well, but we see their point. And they were wrong. That is a case where they were factually wrong. Now, there were some close precedents. That's the defining precedent for state secrets, but it wasn't a shock that the courts would rule that way. But same thing here with Citizens United and the idea of corporations as people. There were precedents before that.
Yeah.
But I would argue they're factually wrong. We do not give corporations the exact same rights as people. So you do not get to pick and choose unless Congress gets to pick and choose. So the problem is that they've always kind of like said, well, but this seems reasonable and this seems reasonable. I mean, like this is unreasonable. As I believe it was Scalia who was like, well, the people don't give up their rights just because they got all together and just because they're a group of people. They all individually have rights. And although that's true, they also get benefits from being a corporation. And none of those benefits are in the Constitution. There's no Amendment 47. You corporations get more rights. What the Supreme Court has done currently is essentially give corporations more rights than people, in some ways. Now, in other ways, they have less. The corporations have no Fifth Amendment right, but apparently they have a First Amendment right.
Right.
How the fuck does that make sense?
Well, it does. I mean, if you're a business. If you're a corporation and everyone on the board wants to spend some of that company money on signs or on a commercial that say, abortion is wrong or abortion is a woman's choice, that was their argument for you're telling us that we cannot make those signs. Okay. We cannot express ourselves.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly because here's the thing. They don't have the Fifth Amendment right to protection if the corporation breaks the law because it's a limited liability corporation. So unless an individual broke the law per se, if it's just like like across the board they wound up breaking the law,
nobody's liable.
Nobody's liable, and they don't have the right to protect the corporation as though it was a person. But somehow the corporation has the right as a person to speech. Fuck you. Have the corporation say we're going to give these people money to do this and then have their names associated with it. That's fine. But corporations have special rights. Now, they also, like I said, they don't have the Fifth Amendment right. There are some rights that they don't get. So it's not 100% that they only have more rights than the people. But it is
Second Amendment?
ideologically incoherent is the problem. Or philosophically incoherent, not to, because I know we all hate ideology here.
Yeah.
It is philosophically incoherent to pick and choose like that without clear-cut guidelines. And the Supreme Court has never said, here we spell out exactly why corporations have this right and not this right. They've never done that. And it wouldn't be their purview to do that. It's Congress's purview. And so they should be getting all or nothing. And the fact that they clearly recognize that it would be absurd for them to get all of them, then it should be all or nothing. We don't say, well, you get... You know what, John? You're kind of an asshole. You get some of the rights.
Yeah. So none of those rights should apply to the corporation.
Not to the corporation. To the individuals. They all have their own individual rights. And the corporation has the rights outlined by the legislation which created it. But just as much, if there's laws limiting it, they should be upheld to those rules just as much. It's a fiction. The corporate personhood is a fiction.
There's an energy company that got in trouble for the CEO was sending emails to every employee saying, we need you to donate $200 to Mitt Romney's campaign. And then they're like, if you can't, it's okay, give what you can, but everything like that. But they were coercing employees and they were using corporate money to put signs all over the place about Obama being a terrorist or something. And they did, they lost that case. And that guy had to pay reparation or, had to pay a fine to his employees and everything. But his employees were suing him for firing them for holding like liberal views and stuff like that. So there are still, like you said, there are limitations on the rights of corporations, even in terms of speech, but not enough to prevent them from spending unlimited sums on political messaging.
The Supreme Court also said that they did not think that money inherently corrupted politics.
Right. That's right.
That's absurd.
Yep.
I mean, that's just absurd. Anyone who does, I'm sorry. Do you know your history? Shall we talk about Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall? Like, I mean, do we need to talk about the Kingfisher? Like, money inherently it straight up does. Like, and that's what money does.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, sure, you bribed that cop, but that didn't necessarily have a...
But then that would mean that you wouldn't allow wealthy individuals to spend more than the average guy either, because that's political equality. That's
I'm of the opinion, personally, that any sort of those things which offer the FCC controls public airways, right?
Yeah.
They control all the bandwidth. They control the cable companies to varying degrees based on the legislation because of common carrier. There's various laws. But the point just being that the FCC is the controlling interest there. If you're a candidate, maybe there should be rules on it, but there should not be political money spent on a candidate, period.
Public finance.
It should be everyone gets this amount of time based on whatever rules are come up with.
Yeah.
And come up with a system. That's fine. Anything else is inherently going to be more corrupt.
Right.
And
this is what Bernie Sanders advocates, public financing of elections, or at the very least, he would promise to nominate judges to repeal Citizens United.
Which that's actually offensive.
But the only problem with that is, I mean, I agree with it, but if you just do that with the FCC and say, okay, you're going to give
Has he said that?
a certain amount of time with who?
Sorry, I'd like to hear your point, but I'd like to actually...
You're offended that Bernie would say, I'm going to purposely nominate a Supreme Court judge for this one decision.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's offensive.
Well, but if it's an unjust decision, how else do you address it?
You address it through... First of all, I mean, ideally, we have 3 branches of government. There's supposed to be 3 branches of government. You're supposed to have legislative solutions. And if it needs to be changed, like, for example, it rested on the idea of corporate personhood. Corporate personhood was entirely created by the Congress. It is not part of the Constitution.
But every president is expected to... That's why it's his job or her job to nominate Supreme Court judges. Where do you expect them to... How do you expect them to choose who to nominate?
Marbury versus Madison was the very first court case that established the precedents of the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court could overrule
laws.
The other branches of government.
Yeah.
Do you know what that case was about?
Can't remember. Is that the runaway slave?
Nope.
Or, Marbury versus Madison. No, what is it?
If I recollect, and I'm sure I can be told if I'm wrong later, but if I recollect, it was about the ability to politically appoint people. It was about what the limits of that were. I don't remember the exact details of it, to be frank, but it came down to that. Fundamentally, political appointments are supposed to follow certain rules and certain conventions.
Right.
I don't want to hear that you're going to do it just because they agree with you. Because you know what? Is their reasoning good? That's the point. It should be... I like the way this guy thinks. I like this guy's view on the Constitution in general. I like, living versus static document. But the idea that they would rule a certain way on a specific issue says nothing to me about how they feel about the law. And we are a nation of laws.
Right, but this president, this person believes that this is what has a political opinion on the law, and so they want to affect that through the appointment of through their powers given under the Constitution. So
they have the power, but I'm ethically bothered by it.
But what else are they? When I nominate Eddie, I'm the president. I nominate you to be a Supreme Court judge. When the next one dies,
right? But
what am I supposed to do? Like, I just don't listen to him about what he thinks about politics. I should have to nominate him because he did a good job as a federal judge, and
he's the best person for the job. Yes, and
it's
granted,
just silly though.
There's going to be a subjective element.
Nobody does that.
Right.
There's not any president.
And I wouldn't expect them to or even want... That's where I wouldn't even want them to
There's
use
a difference
that
between
artifice.
respecting the way someone thinks and respecting what they come up with.
No,
there are a lot of atheists out there that I think are fucking morons.
Right, but Bernie would say, I'm gonna find the judge who believes this about Citizens United, who's also a great judge and belongs in the Supreme Court.
But I'd want to hear what that reason was.
Well, he would give you.
And
that's why it offends me that he would focus on that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, though.
I would vote. I would appoint someone who thinks the way we think on these issues would be more appealing to me than someone who's just going to repeal that.
But anyway, Donald Trump's self-financed. That's why he doesn't want a super PAC. Bernie's the only person who's ideologically opposed to it and therefore is intentionally refusing to take money. And that's a unique thing in a politician, refusing to take money for your campaign. That means a lot. And that's one of the top 3 reasons that I support him so ravenously is because...
You're very hungry?
Out of a field of 20 people... to be the only one who's rejecting it on ideological grounds is very impressive to me.
Well, and also that he's rejecting that and still getting as much media attention as he is,
and money,
because that's
money from individual donors.
But money's not as money's supposed to eventually equal attention, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole reason politicians collect this money.
Yeah,
is to try to get their message out there,
right? Through
ads, through newspapers, whatever, signs on the fucking road. So that's what I was going to say is, even if you limited and had the FCC give everyone a certain amount of time every week or day or whatever it is, you'd still have politicians able to spend their own amount of money on placing placards and, whatever around and billboards and stuff like that. So there'd still be a discrepancy between the really rich person running and able to spend however much money.
Most of the signs are illegal anyway, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, if they're going to enforce the law,
so but you're saying
sure.
he's managed to get a lot of media attention, even though
without having
that super PAC
so
messaging.
Then, in my opinion, that proves that you really don't need that money. I mean,
one reason is that he's the only threat to Hillary Clinton, so the media has to look at someone. They have to look at someone besides to give you a facade that there's a democratic process going on here. They have to say, well, here's the other guy. I mean,
that's the Republicans' big problem, is that their field is just too big.
But they could have just not let him come to the debate at all. I mean, and again, you could say, well, they might have done that if he was running as an independent or whatever, not as a Democrat. But since he's running as a Democrat,
well, definitely
they'll let him on.
It's all based on percentage at that point. So anyone in the Democratic side who's looking for an alternative is going to go towards Bernie. That's again the Republicans' problem, is because they have 20 people. That's why you got people with less than 1%.
Yeah,
who may or may not even be legitimate. Is the problem, and maybe they would have 50% if it wasn't for the fact that there's 12 other guys.
Bush, the presumptive favorite, is sitting in filth at 5%. I mean, he's doing worse and worse and worse.
It's looking more and more like you're going to have to do some push-ups. Is the point?
Well, me?
You said that Trump wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
You said you thought it was going to be
Rubio.
Yeah, except for Trump's still in the lead and Carson's catching up with him.
No, they're about
Rubio's
equal.
not anywhere near those.
No,
two.
but he's not. But he's third place, strong third place, and that fact is those two guys are going to crash and burn. You guys got to look.
Carson's already crashing.
They're not going to last.
Now there's Rubio. Okay,
he's the only one left. He's the establishment one. He's young. He's Hispanic. He gets that Hispanic vote. That was the key thing.
He doesn't get the Hispanic vote.
He gets some of it, man.
Ted Cruz.
He's Cuban. He
Ted
gets
Cruz
some of it.
He gets the Cuban vote. He doesn't really get the Hispanic vote.
He gets enough of it that it makes a difference.
He gets the Cuban vote.
Ted Cruz.
Unfortunately, the Republican Party is a clown car.
I know.
And it's essentially Russian roulette right now as to which one of them is going to get it, because all of them are terrible human beings. They all are. There's not one of them who is... actually, wait, you know what?
I kind of like the John Kasich guy. I kind of like his speech.
Yes. Okay, how about this? There's
And
not
I
one who has
like
a plausible chance.
I like Rand Paul.
Even
a little
Lindsey
bit,
Graham
too.
is less awful. You like who?
Rand Paul a little bit. There's still a part of me that appreciates libertarianism.
No.
Eddie has spoken.
Lindsey Graham and Kasich are the only two that I would.
Yes. So when I make my sweeping statement that they're all terrible people, I tentatively retract it from those two. The rest of them are just legitimately bad people.
It's because I dream of seeing a Sanders versus Rand Paul election, where it's libertarian versus democratic socialist. It's the most pure contrast of ideals, political ideals there could be. All right. So anyway, Hillary's looking stronger, stronger and stronger. But, everyone's saying Bernie Sanders has hit his ceiling. That you get all these articles where he's running out of steam. He's at his record high for support. He's at 33%. He's never been that high in the whole time. So she's back up near her high. She was above 60 at one point. She's like 53 now. So, yeah, she's got 20 points on Bernie, which is huge. But she's not at her record, and he is at his. So that is one piece of media bullshit. We're like, Sanders running out of steam. He's at his record. If it was anyone else who was at their highest thing of the campaign.
Yeah, but every campaign peaks. So the argument that they're making is this must be his peak. This must be his peak.
But he hit these numbers, 9
they're
days
wrong.
ago.
They're probably wrong. I'm just saying that it's not ridiculous that they would make that case.
No.
Well,
they want to be the ones who were so smart who saw when he peaked.
Right.
You guys watch the Game of Thrones at all?
Oh, yeah. Seen them all.
No.
Really,
No.
Eddie? That's crazy.
I don't watch a lot of fantasy.
Oh. Well, I don't watch a lot either, but that one is
I mean, it is fantasy, but it's more based on the War of the Roses.
It's English history. It's medieval English history.
There's
with magic.
and it's more kind of like soap opera drama,
Yeah.
Type stuff. But I was going to mention the Mountain.
Yeah.
And you know what's happening with him and whatever.
What?
Well, he got
In the show. Oh,
in the show.
Yeah. I thought you meant the
He
actor.
came
So
from Muhammad. That's all I know.
So I'm just I have a feeling that somewhere in the basement of the White House they have a cryogenically frozen Reagan or Ike or somebody that's going to come back
Well, no.
before this election, this coming election.
You're already right because they've already suggested getting Romney to run again. So that would he's been cryogenically frozen since Brigham Young or wherever he went. He's been, so he's just
if that's where your party's at, our last candidate who lost and kind of sucks is the one that we should.
I
go
thought
with
I heard something about Ross Perot running again too.
No, he's got like 108. How could he do it?
Ross Perot is a joke, but I don't think he's a horrible person.
No, he's not.
And I just want to be very clear. I don't
with
agree with his politics, but I actually think Ross Perot is actually. Do you know he
could have won?
He
dropped out. This is the weirdest thing. When the polls were taken in
this time, and he dropped out pretty much, if I remember correctly, after the vice presidential debate. Pretty soon after that, do you remember his vice president candidate?
Who was that? Forbes.
Yeah,
Steve.
No,
Forbes.
no, it wasn't Steve Forbes.
Oh,
it was, or maybe it was on one of them. But the one I'm talking about was the elderly military veteran that basically was on the vice presidential candidate debate thing. And I was like,
the general.
Where am I? Who? What? Who? What? Huh?
Where am I? Yeah. Well, no. It was much closer to the election than we are now in 1992, and it was within a year of the general election. And yeah, so the candidates had already been chosen for the two major parties, and then there was Ross Perot. They did a survey. Ross Perot had like 32%. George Bush was at like 25%, and Bill Clinton was at like 28%. And then a couple weeks later, Perot drops out of the race. I mean, this was unprecedented. An independent candidate was going to win, maybe. He was in the lead, fairly close to the election. And he drops out and tells this story about how the Bush camp had threatened to publish like naked pictures of his daughter or something before her wedding or on her wedding. Yeah. And there's this big scandal that the Bush campaign did this. No one ever found out if it was true. And then he comes back into the race a couple months later. And it's like, what are you doing? What was going on there? And of course he loses and steals a lot of votes from George Bush.
Yeah. He's a goober. Perot was a goober. But, he rescued a bunch of his employees from... I don't remember what country it was. It was something like Lebanon or something. Yeah, yeah. Been taken hostage, and he
came in with SEAL Team 6.
Yeah, like you're joking, but no, that's kind of what he did.
Ross Perot.
Yeah,
I'm going to save some guys from a building.
And that's also why I think
it's a good impression.
It's almost an Obama.
Yeah. Why I think Trump is maybe doing what he's doing and what his strategy is going to be. I have a feeling still that his whole Republican candidacy is kind of a joke. And someone else is going to get nominated, like Rubio or fucking Ted Cruz or
Bush,
whoever, Bush. And then he's still going to remain in the race to detract votes from the Republicans.
We'll see what he does.
He promised he wouldn't, though, and I was surprised. I was actually legit surprised at that because I was buying that line.
That little fake document.
He promised that he wouldn't do it in the same way that he says that he never filed for bankruptcy. Right. You know what I mean? He was kind of snaky about it. He was kind of like...
Yeah.
And of course his thing was if the Parisians had guns, they would have been able to stop this attack. Because you know how they let handguns into heavy metal shows at large venues all the time.
But first of all, see, this is a problem with Facebook. He did not say that after the event of yesterday or the day before. He said that back when the Charlie Hebdo thing happened. Nope. Go and research it. He said it after the Charlie Hebdo thing happened.
Yeah.
And now people are bringing it back up on Twitter and using it to talk shit about him. When this happened,
he did say something.
When this happened, he didn't say anything about that.
He did say something about the borders, immigration.
He might have said something about the immigration and refugees, yeah. But he didn't say anything about guns.
We know that one of these shooters in Paris was from Syria and got in on a Syrian passport.
Actually, I thought it was two of them. I thought
heard one.
I thought they found 2
It's
passports.
changed. Yeah, they found 2 passports. It's changed. It's done.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I gotta hand. I mean, this is radical agnostic. I don't think immigration policy is the answer to terrorism. But I gotta hand it to the immigration people who said these military age males are coming in with the refugees. Now, yeah, it's literally 1 in 20,000, but I guess it's true. They do come in, so I gotta give them that. In all honesty.
Right.
They said this would happen, and it kind of did. But now most of the attackers in Paris were not from Syria, were not refugees. They were born in France or born somewhere else. So it's not a perfect solution, or they're not right completely at all. But I got to hand it to them. A lot of conservatives said this would happen, and it kind of did.
But I mean, it's happened before. The remake of Scarface was all about that. When Castro kicked out all the criminals, and they all went to Florida, and and it wasn't just all criminals. I mean, a lot of refugees were there, but there were some actually people from prison that he had let go to come into America. And,
it's tough.
I mean, I know the remake is a fucking fiction, but it's based on sort of.
So you think Trump is going to keep going, dude? Like,
I
think he'll be the nominee.
The problem I have is
nominee?
that it's such a clown car.
I don't know.
None of them have a chance of winning. They're all terrible human beings. And right now, he's at the highest level of popularity. I think that there will be something that will be some kind of sea change, but it can't possibly come from the other guys because they're all worthless. And I'm sorry, they're bad people.
Yeah, but it's not that someone else has to rise up. It's that he has to fall down. And then you'll get a Rubio who will just be automatically in the lead. And people will glom onto him as the networks tell them, you need to vote for a Republican or Hillary will be the president. Like, you've got to vote, whoever it is, vote. And the Democrats are already doing this,
I think this is going to become more clear to us when they actually tell us who their running mate is.
Well, that's
they don't do that till they win the nomination.
Yeah.
This is the question is the nomination. And my thing on Trump is, like, for example, Ben Carson has been a politician. He's been a neurosurgeon. He's
not a politician.
Well, but
he's a politician.
Wait a minute.
No, he's never been elected to political office.
They win the nomination at the convention, right?
Yeah.
They win the nomination at the convention?
Yes, yeah.
I think
and then the convention is, like, during the summer, and then the election is, okay.
Yeah.
But, like, Ben Carson is insane and dishonest. And we have discovered that in part because of his national prominence.
I don't think he's insane.
No, he's insane.
No, because I know all the crazy shit he says.
He thinks that the pyramids were built as grain silos.
I know. You know what's funny about that, though?
Is that it's nonsense?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But I ascribe to another fringe set of theories by Graham Hancock, and I don't believe that they were built as tombs either. So I think the mainstream view...
What do you think they were built as?
I don't know.
Is it aliens?
No,
no.
Not
You're
aliens.
not saying it's aliens?
No aliens.
But it's aliens?
It's not aliens. It's an advanced...
Then what is it?
It is an advanced civilization.
Okay, what is it?
What do you mean? They were built... Because according to mainstream history, the pyramids were built at the beginning of Egyptian history in the Old Kingdom, which makes no sense. It was the first thing where they date it is their first records of Egypt. So that is absurd in itself.
No, it isn't, but go on. Please do go on.
It's pretty absurd. So the idea is that there were civilizations before that were eliminated by the Ice Age, by the end of the Ice Age and the rising sea levels in 10,500 BC, which we know to be a fact, that there was worldwide rise in sea levels when the Ice Age ended. And Graham Hancock thinks that there were fairly advanced civilizations around the world before that.
So Atlantis. We're going with Atlantis?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Why
is it so crazy? It's an island with an advanced civilization where they could circumnavigate the globe.
And as soon as we see some kind of evidence of that would be cool.
There's plenty of evidence.
No, there isn't.
When we know
That's dogmatic.
When we know that us in our modern civilization have people doing art and things of the sort, statues, and that one dude that put the pink plastic around the fucking atolls or whatever, and wanted to string bras across the Grand Canyon, and all kind. Why is it so unfathomable to us that maybe someone built those things with no purpose as art?
Yeah, that is unfathomable because it's such a monumental task.
The pyramids at least appear. And it's my understanding that it basically the first one was built at what might be the peak of the civilization, and then everything else was part of the decline. That's why the other ones are smaller. The Great Pyramid is the oldest. The other ones get it being smaller.
Yeah.
So it is not unreasonable to think that at the peak is also when we have most of our records, especially given that societies throughout history have not been super keen on keeping the older records. That's a modern thing.
Well, the Egyptians were very keen on documenting the descendants of the pharaoh, the pharaonic lines, and all the kings. That was their whole thing.
But that's always been propaganda.
Well, it's also national history. I mean,
It is, but the importance was more the propaganda aim than it was the historical one.
But we know what led up to Rome, the Roman Empire. We know it was a republic, and before that, it was influences from the Greek city-states and Hellenism and all that stuff. So we know that. I mean, we know.
It's not unreasonable to believe that our records of the point that you're making is that. I don't even understand that our first records show the biggest pyramid, so it can't have been them. Like that.
No, it was them, but it was that they were borrowing technology from an earlier time, which explains why
logs and rocks.
No, technology meant to construct those things with such precision and in accordance with astrological stuff in the sky and how it lines up, which is completely all real. That's all legit.
Their point, though, is fundamentally, we could argue on that for an hour, but the point is they weren't fucking grain silos.
No, they were not that.
Okay.
They're not hollow.
Yeah.
There's passages in them, but they're not.
Exactly.
They're not hollow.
Yeah,
Why would you build it that big
Yeah.
if you only wanted 1/50th of that to be hollow?
Yeah, exactly. And then that's so like.
You know, it's weird. There's no.
Well, there's chambers though, right?
Yeah, there's chambers.
Yeah, just like when you were in school and they showed you the diagram of the food pyramid, all the grains at the bottom.
So you put the sugar on the top. That's why they were were white on the outside because of all the sugar spilling down the sides.
What's weird, particularly strange about the Great Pyramid, there's no hieroglyphs in it. And the Egyptians were meticulous record keepers, and they like to explain what they were doing with these things. There's no writing.
I'm willing to buy the possibility.
I don't know
of an
why that
alternative
is.
Answer.
Yeah.
But I'm not willing to buy that they were grain silos because
No.
Joshua built them.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah,
Like
biblical character Joseph.
Was it Joseph?
Yeah,
Joseph.
because he was
Joseph is the one that went into Egypt.
Egypt.
And the Pharaoh, Madam B's advisor.
So-
blah, blah, blah.
So, speaking of nonsense, Flat Earth Society. Now, have you ever looked into this,
Yep.
you guys?
Yep.
Have you heard their? It reminds me so much of my creationist days, where I researched and found all these elaborate answers for.
Well, there's differences. There's Flat Earth, but then there's the Hollow Earth Society
that's
as well.
way
That's a whole different
That's
ballgame.
a whole different ballgame.
Everyone knows the Earth is hollow.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. And the reptilians. I mean,
Okay.
these are established.
Haven't you
Okay.
seen V? It's a documentary.
No, yeah, the flat Earth. They say it's a saucer, so it's like a dinner plate, and the outer edge is Antarctica, and then and there's no such thing as gravity because that doesn't work because dinner plate size shaped planets don't work with gravity. It would be really hard to walk outward towards the edge. It would get harder and harder. It would feel like you were going uphill even though it was flat. That's what would happen on a plate if in the real universe. But to them, so they have to discard gravity. They don't believe in gravity. They think we're held to the earth by electromagnetism. They're not sure how that works because we're not made of metal, and then metal stuff would fall faster than feathers and stuff in a vacuum, which they don't. So there's problems with their theory. Maybe a couple cracks.
Okay, but so Antarctica
Yeah.
and the Arctic Circle, I'm guessing, are the edge.
Yeah.
But then that extends on the whole entire other side of
No.
the plate as well.
No, the other side is empty. There's nothing on the other side.
Well, but you can walk.
It's
so when you
turtles
walk
all the way
past,
down.
what is-
It's turtles all the way down.
you can't.
you can't walk off the
Well,
edge.
what they say is that the government, because the
You
Antarctica
can walk off the edge. That's one of their ideas.
Well, that's what
Yeah, you can. But
Oh,
you
you
can't.
can.
Yeah, but you're not allowed
But
to
you
go
walk-
there because the
Oh,
government
you're not-
stops you from
stops.
traveling from South America to Antarctica. They stop you. You're not allowed to, even though
So how-
Werner
but-
Herzog went
But
there.
they like stop you with actually like tanks and troops and
yeah. Well, they
fences
well, it's
or
like
something,
conspiracy.
or they're-
With conspiracy.
Well,
They
it's like
stop you
it
with
is. It's-
Men in Black.
You would need a passport and stuff to go to Antarctica. It's really hard. You have to pay money and sign up to visit one of the in the real world to visit one of the research stations there.
No, you can get hired to go there and work.
I know,
there,
but you
and
have to get hired and fill out papers and get your shots and stuff.
It's just like another job.
No,
it's a
but
little
no,
more
there-
than that.
There
'cause
are
you-
people that have gone there with the same qualifications and the same sort of stuff you have to go through to get a job at Walmart. work in research
Correct.
stations.
It is still a bit more involved than Walmart because you do have to get shots. It is a international zone, if I recollect. No country lays claim to
and you'll be
Antarctica.
living on a science facility.
Yeah.
So
No,
whoever's running
totally
that is gonna
terrible.
have to
There's a
vet
book
you.
that's all about it.
Yeah.
Well, and that comes down to the thing about actually, I think a lot of conspiracy theories, but I would argue also other things, is some things are unfalsifiable. You make an unfalsifiable claim.
Right.
Some things are falsifiable, and you just never do that. But you keep spouting the conspiracy.
Well, yeah, your attitude is unfalsifiable. So whenever those objections get raised, you say, "Well, gravity isn't real then, because our plate doesn't work with gravity."
There's clear ways to test the theory of the flat Earth.
Well, one of those. They say they have, though. They point lasers. They go out in the ocean and they put 4 boats 4 miles apart. And they say, according to the mainstream idea, the curvature is this much. There should be like a 6-foot drop. And here I am pointing a laser pen and it hits the other guy's white sign and there's no drop. And they say it all the time. They test it. So
that's not a real test. If you say you could walk off the edge of the planet, you're making a sweeping claim.
Or just find a picture of the edge. Just give us a picture.
Go there.
Go up in a balloon and get us a picture of the edge. But they tell you, we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to go to Antarctica, so we can't. But we will tell you this. We go up in balloons to 150,000 feet or put a camera in a balloon, and we take a picture, and there's no curvature. And he says the curvature, all the pictures with curvature that you see are because of fisheye lenses and cameras. That's what they say. They've got an answer for everything.
Sure.
And it's
just like the flag waving on the moon.
And that's why where I started was this. You said that Ben Carson was an idiot or insane, and that's where I disagree because these people, they're just like I know who they are. They're just like me. And the more crazy the theory, the more compelling it is because it makes you unique. Back to the part 1 of
that
this
doesn't make
show.
you less crazy. Insane and crazy are not clinical diagnoses. They are just.
But I
terms.
wasn't crazy when I
yes,
was a creationist.
You were crazy.
No, I was just wrong.
You were so wrong that I would argue you were crazy.
How does someone just go back and forth from crazy to sane? Is that a
like
thing
people
that
are people that join cults, people that
Yeah, I look at them as not crazy because I've worked in psych facilities and I know what crazy when I see it.
Just.
But is anyone that's crazy actually think they're crazy? Have you ever talked to anyone that was crazy and said, "Yeah, I know I'm crazy"?
Some people that are psychotic and they see like hallucinations and ghosts and stuff. They
when they're on their medication, then they're like, "Oh yeah,"
or when they're off and they know it's coming, they go like, They have to learn that though. They have to learn that that's me gonna be crazy. But you're right that like it's not frequent, and I would argue. Crazy and insane are non-clinical diagnoses. So like, I'm not actually saying, this guy's schizophrenic. I'm not saying you were schizophrenic or anything, or psychotic. But I'm saying that belief
is an abandonment of reason.
An abandonment of reason so significant that you crazy.
But, it also makes use of reason heavily. Because when I was a creation...
It does. Well, it makes use of the trappings of reason.
Yeah.
It is the counterfeit reason.
And generally, like I said, people don't think they're crazy even when they're thinking crazy thoughts, and so they have to pattern logic after what their beliefs are, and they have to like make it fit into their worldview.
Yeah, but
that's one of
my problems with Eddie's love of science is that I view philosophy as over and above science, but science is so easily corrupted by the desire to make new facts fit the model, and it's not just an exception to the rule. That's what is constantly done. That's what dark matter is. It's an invented thing to fit the facts because distant galaxies do not move as they should based on our calculation of their mass. So we say, well, they must have 90% more mass than we're seeing, and that must be something we'll call dark matter, which we have literally no other definition of than it's the placeholder for the thing that makes galaxies behave oddly that we can't explain. Just like they said Vulcan, there was a planet called Vulcan to explain Mercury's retrograde or whatever, Mercury's weird orbit. They had to invent a placeholder, or the ether. It was something they invented to make it the new facts make sense according to their.
Let's focus on the ether because the ether was an idea. It was a proposal, a hypothesis.
Yeah, like Vulcan.
And they but I like ether more than Vulcan for this context. They disproved that because they found ways to test that because the intent was, let's keep what we have and see if there's something that can explain it. If we can't think of something that explains it, we may have to think of something else, and we'll always try to find something that we can test to figure out if we're right.
Right.
Dark matter, I'm actually not super familiar with the tests on it. I was under the impression that we had done some tests that suggest that that's actually real. But maybe not. Let's start from a position of pure ignorance and say we know lots of things. They all work. They all work locally. We've tested everything, and it doesn't quite make sense over a distance.
Right.
What would make sense is if there was some kind of matter, we don't know what kind, that would explain that. An additional matter, and then all the math works. And it could be wrong, just like the ether was wrong. But the benefit is that they're giving me a thing that we can look for and test, while simultaneously saying if somebody else has got a better idea than dark matter, we'll come up with it and give me something that's just as good as this, that's just as easily tested
You're
as
right.
that.
That's a good scientific method, and that's how it should pan out over time. But at any given time, I'm proposing that a larger proportion of scientific belief than you might say is made up of those placeholders. And scientists are continually fooled by the idea that now we've got it. Basically, now we've got it. I have a quote in the book, if you remember, from the 1800s. You
have a couple quotes.
Yeah, where they said, it's just down to the 10th decimal place now, what we know about the universe. It was 1898. They didn't know anything.
People make arrogant pronouncements like that all the time. You remember Bill Gates said, I don't know why anybody would ever want more than 250 megs of memory. People make... And they're wrong, but I don't think that's an indictment of the concept to which they have aligned themselves.
It's not an indictment. It's just my only point is to say that at any given time in science, that much of it is made up of that stuff. And I don't have a better suggestion. I don't say throw everything. I'm just saying you should make you more open to fringe hypotheses. And
no. It should not, because the difference between a fringe hypothesis and a mainstream hypothesis is the thought process that went into it. How was the double helix discovered? How was the double helix discovered?
I don't know.
Francis Crick was on acid.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, he was on acid and had this vision of this thing. It was so cool, man. Right?
Yeah.
And then he went and tested it.
Right.
Contrast that with flat Earth. Oh, they're confident. That's totally it. Well, have you done this, or this? Well, no, because somebody would stop us.
But that flat Earth. Oh yeah, and that fringe hypothesis and creationism. They don't stand up to any testing.
But that was my problem with the flat Earth thing, and why I was asking about the other side of the plate and stuff like that. Because instead of trying to make the facts that fit your worldview, I would think you'd want to fit your worldview amongst the facts that you know. And so instead of saying it's a flat plate and the government just doesn't let you go over that edge, that you can go over that edge and it's just Antarctica, the whole entire other side of the plate. And so you're just traveling, and you don't realize that you're on the other side of the plate. Say that. You're just like going in Antarctica, and then you get on the other side and you go back on the edge of the plate and then you go... so I don't know.
Yeah, because
stuff like that doesn't make sense to me. When you could possibly try to make your worldview fit the facts better than trying to make the facts fit your worldview.
Yeah. But what they would argue is that we made our facts fit the heliocentric model, and that But there's pictures. I mean, so they have to come up with not only a different hypothesis scientifically, they have to come up with a massive intergovernmental conspiracy that every space agency, everyone that shot a rocket
and
up,
they've never bothered
all
to test
falsified.
It. They've never bothered to test the edges of that hypothesis. And
they do test it with the balloon and the lasers and stuff. They claim to be testing.
If there's an edge of the plate, because
space travel is impossible.
It could all be Time Cube. You guys ever look at Time Cube?
I remember Cube, the movie.
Oh, no, you got to look up Time Cube. Oh, I can't even summarize that.
The website?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But, what if the hypothesis is not proven even by their straight line laser? Because let me propose something. The Earth is an octahedron. Or, actually, what the hell is that? I don't know. Many-sided, but with flat planes.
A polygon.
But that's not three-dimensional. That's not three-dimensional.
20-sided die.
Yeah, it is.
Polygon. A polyhedron is...
Polygon
is
three-dimensional.
Okay, I got my terms confused.
Right.
The point is that, yes, it's a polygon. So, you've got flat spots. Oh, look, I've just explained it. And It doesn't need to be a flat Earth.
Right.
What would prove it was a flat Earth is you go to the edge of the damn plate.
Yeah, give us a picture of it.
And you have multiple ways of doing it. And what you've tested is something that does not...
Well, they claim that space travel is not possible because there's a dome. Because that's how
they go see the dome.
That's how. Well, they said they did. They said we fired a rocket. We got an amateur rocket that went 75 miles up or something, and there's a video of it on YouTube, and it hits the dome. You see it hit the dome, And then the guy's like, well, what about meteorites and stuff? They're like, well, we think that those might be pieces of the dome. And he's like, well, what's the dome made out of? Because it's got to be clear. And then he's like, sapphire.
And why aren't meteors sapphires? Like, there's just too much that doesn't.
Yeah, I know. And then they go, well, where's the sun? Because they believe the sun is 32 miles across in diameter or in circumference and is like 1,000 miles from Earth instead of like.
Wait a minute! I thought we had a dome. Oh, so the sun is outside the dome?
Well, they became an argument. He goes, we have one theory that says the sun is outside the dome. Another theory that says the sun is inside the dome. So we're not quite sure.
Well, if it's 1,000 feet from the Earth, it can't be inside the dome.
It's 1,000 miles.
75. 1,000 miles. Still, it's only 75 feet to the dome, right?
Miles. Well, whatever.
75 miles.
Some people think it's in the dome.
Really, an amateur rocket went 75 miles up into the atmosphere?
Yeah, they got a rocket that could go really high. And
an amateur rocket you can go buy at a hobby store?
I don't know. I don't know the details.
Did they submit this to peer-reviewed research?
I mean, honestly, Mark, it might not be true.
Well, I'm just completely confused because even like the balloon and laser, I'm thinking like the laser that cats run after and like children's birthday party balloons.
It's that, but they're better versions of those things.
But, it fundamentally betrays your thought process when you do those little things like that don't actually prove your point.
No, I know.
I know. We could be in the hollow Earth.
But
we could be on the polyhedron. We're polygon. Sorry, damn it.
Polyhedron might be right, but
no, it's polygon. You're right.
That's a
polyglot.
But
no, I'm not.
If you're saying the Earth is flat, all that other stuff is extraneous to your hypothesis. And if you were actually intending to test it, you would do those things.
Yeah.
And then you would not come across like a fringe scientist. You might, before you did the test, we're organizing a trip to the Antarctic to test to see if there's an edge to the Earth. People might go...
Well, when I was defending fringe hypotheses, I was talking about things like where the people who say the speed of light might be variable, it might not be constant because... every time they measured it for 75 years or 100 years, it was a little different. Now, could easily be explained by the fact that our equipment isn't quite, precise enough, and that the atmosphere can slow it down, can slow light down, things can slow it down. So that might be it, and that's the mainstream explanation because in 1970-something, they decided, all right, it's not variable anymore because every time we measure it, it's a little different. So it's this now. It became the meter rod in Paris. You know what I mean? Like that's the meter.
Sort of. I mean, it had been seen as a constant before then. It had been seen as a constant. It was consistently measured by those measuring it.
No. Well, it's very consistent, but it was never exactly consistent. In fact, over time, it got either slower or faster on a pretty reliable table. But it was that Einstein's theories need it to be the cosmic speed limit. It has to be non-variable.
No.
So they fixed it. They said it's this now in the 70s, and that's what it is now.
Einstein's theories don't require it to be invariable. It requires it to be a limit, though. It doesn't have to be invariable for the math to still work.
I see. Yeah.
Like the math still works. Whether the number is like when you're dealing with a number that's like 100 bazillion, it doesn't matter whether it's 100 bazillion and one.
Right.
Because it's likely to be that small of a variation. So it's a fringe theory to think that might be variable, but then I would want to see you extensively testing it. And yes, it would be fringe until you can give me some kind of evidence.
The mainstream,
don't just look at the old shit. Look at like be thinking, how do I show you I'm right?
Right.
And that is the intent there. That is the point.
Well, but
and they do try.
What's even the reasoning for the flat Earth? What
it's a religious thing.
It's a religious thing.
Honestly, it usually ends up in religion.
Is it like intrafamilial? Is it like has it been passed down?
Well, that's the thing. I remember.
It's always hard to tell who's a Poe and who isn't in the flat Earth thing.
I remember.
So it's hard to.
I remember reading about Flat Earth Society in the 90s, pre-internet, and then now. It's huge comparatively. It was like 150 guys in the 90s. It was like a few dudes, and they had like a magazine, and they did it like once a year.
Is there like one like guy that's in charge and like
there's
all he
the
does?
Flat Earth Society, I think, is the main hub for it. But there's a lot of different splinter groups that are like, no, you original Flat Earth guys are fucking totally wrong. It's not a sapphire. It's made out of tears of angels or something. So there's but the weird thing is that the internet is supposed to be this thing where the truth kind of filters its way out eventually, but instead
but that's never been the case.
I know, but I wanted it to be that, and now instead you get like stuff like Flat Earth is so compelling to so many people now, and they look up the videos and they spend their whole all their free time researching it, and it becomes part of their personality. And of course, it becomes an ideology. So any challenge to it is now a personal attack on them. So it's that whole thing. It's just like creationists. It's the same thing. But I'm just shocked by how
crazy.
Big it's gotten. It's huge now.
There's a natural tendency among people to, to want to feel special, like you said before, to want to feel like the smartest person in the room, to think that they've got the secret knowledge. That's how cults happen. This guru guy has the secret knowledge, and I'm going to get in on it. Yeah, there's only 20 of us, but that alien ship is coming, and then Heaven's Gate is going to open for us.
And it also provides you with a community.
And a community. Oh, yeah, there's more than one. I would say that, when you're first getting in, it's that feeling of being special, and then, yes, it's the community. It's the thing that certain religious groups, prey on. The more established religions don't have to do that as much just because they're so big, and at a certain point, they can become like, well, we got a bazillion people. We don't care if we got you, but if you think that, if you like our ideas, then fine. But you know what? There are still some established religions that still behave awful culty, and most of them still have parts of them that are culty. They always appeal to secret knowledge. The priesthood knows more than the layperson. Right. The layperson knows more than the heathen.
That's a good point. Secret knowledge. Yeah. Well, and guess what? Ancient peoples couldn't see the color blue.
There are actually still people who the number of colors a person can recognize varies depending on how many different colors they have in their language.
Exactly.
There's I think an African group. I just did research on this, but I don't remember the group. But it's like they have a color between orange and yellow that like we don't have.
Right.
And so if you test it, some people like who don't have that color would still kind of be like, yeah, that looks a little different. And then some people, but like, that's clearly go from good. I can't even say the word.
And so the ancient Greeks in Homer, the Romans, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Hebrews, none of them had a word for blue. And so when they described things like the ocean, Homer called it the wine dark sea. In other words, it looked kind of like wine to him. And when they described the sky, another thing that's commonly viewed as blue, they described it as white. And so it's just it becomes a philosophical question, and it very much lends itself to Wittgenstein's philosophy by saying that all of our perception and encountering of the world is built off of what our language can do and what we have words for. In other words, if you don't have a word for something, you kind of don't see it. Mm-hmm. You can't see it in a certain important way. And one of that there was that one movie, and I don't know if this is true, but they claimed that when Cortez, or Columbus arrived in South America or Central America, the people on the shore couldn't see the ships. They couldn't. They didn't see them as ships or as anything man-made, even when they got quite close, because they had never seen something of large size on the sea. These were tribal people that they only had like rowboats and stuff.
It was Cortez. Columbus never made it to mainland America.
Yeah, he was hitting the islands in the Caribbean. Yeah,
it was Cortez, and I've heard that before, and I think it's probably plausible. I'm sure the problem I have with it is when they say they didn't see the ships at all.
Right.
I'm sure they saw something.
Yeah, they must have.
But to them, it was a blob as opposed to what we would recognize as a ship. And
maybe they thought it was a cloud or like an island.
And that's an inherent part of people all the time. Our brains are constantly filling in details for us. How many times have you seen someone at a great distance where the resolution of the image in your brain just is not sufficient to actually make a picture, but you think it's a woman, and then you get closer, you're like, oh no, that's a dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that's happened to most people. Or vice versa. You know, not to be sexist. But like, so our brains always are filling in that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's philosophically important in terms of recognizing the limits of our conversation. I'm not sure if it on its own is philosophically important as a principle, but I think in terms of recognizing
the connection between language and perception, I think is extremely important philosophically.
Well, that's like all the stuff that's a paragraph where all the vowels are taken off,
right?
And you can still read it, or they're like every second letter is switched,
right?
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
but I was going to come up with a better theory even than what you guys have. It's basically all explained with the flat Earth thing. The sky is sapphire, so the sun shining through it is going to make the ocean look like wine, wine dark.
Yeah.
And then as the meteors and comets, the dome crashes down on us, it gets less and less red, and then finally we can see the real color blue.
The dome's been falling apart because we defied God's law.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Good one. That's it. That's what it is.
It was Wittgenstein, was he actually German, or is it just a very German last
He was
name? I don't
Austrian.
remember. So German.
German.
Who was the crazy king? Wasn't it something
King-
like that? King.
what? You talking about King Canute?
The Crazy King.
He was in like
You can have to be
Austria
more
or somewhere.
specific about crazy
There's
kings.
been a couple.
Liechtenstein.
No,
I
that
don't
was the
know.
painter,
Wig,
or the photographer.
Wigden. Yeah. It's not.
I don't know who
There's some mad king that.
George.
But it is interesting that a philosopher comes from a language that is particularly adept at constructing new concepts.
Yeah,
Like-
German. You just smash words together, basically,
and come
you
up
get
with a whole new concept,
subtle
like
new concept.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah,
Which we only really understand it because we have it now as a loan word. You can use Schadenfreude, and at least some people will understand what you mean, even though it's a loan word because it's not English.
yeah.
But it's
or Zeitgeist.
or Zeitgeist
Yeah.
or Gestalt.
Yeah, and a lot of French words too that we don't make English
d'oeuvre.
versions of. Yeah, that's,
Fellatio.
That's Latin.
yeah.
Isn't it Latin or is it
I
Greek?
think that's Latin.
I think it's Latin.
What?
Fellatio.
Oh, no.
I believe it's Latin, as I believe cunnilingus is also Latin.
And English, of course, because we mentioned there's the Romance languages: Spanish, French,
German.
no, Portuguese, Romanian, and
Romanian's romance?
yeah,
If you watch A Fish Called Wanda, you'll realize that German
Italian.
is Romance language.
Italian. Those are the 5 Romance languages. They're all developed from Latin. That's what makes them Romance languages. So, but then you got Germanic languages and the Vikings
Teutonic.
and Germans, yeah, and English is basically smashing those two together. We're not a Romance language. English is not a Romance language, but we're very much similar to them in a lot of ways. But then we have this huge German influence from the Celtic peoples, or maybe, and then the Vikings and the Germans, the people from over there too.
Well, also, English is the smashing of Saxons and the Normans language, right? And that's where you get swear words from, because whichever one it was that lost the battle, their language was the baser language.
The English lost. It was the French.
No, he's talking about before that, the Saxons and the Normans.
Yeah.
Weren't the Normans?
Because basically,
from-
so the
Normans
difference.
were, I think, originally from France.
yeah.
But like we don't. But it's not quite the same as when we think of all the wars between England and
William
France.
the Conqueror, though, was a Norman. He was French, and it was a Proto-French language. And
Yes.
then, and he conquered England in 1000.
But I don't know that they were. Was it called even France at the time?
No.
No. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
the Gauls.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it was
the
No,
Gauls.
it was Normans, like you
The
said.
Normans,
It was
okay.
they were the Norm. I think. Yeah, William the Conqueror was a French guy. He was a Norman, and they spoke like a prototype French.
Okay, I was just trying to distinguish it from because the English and the French have been at war for a long time.
Yeah.
And so just to be very clear, this is like pre either of those things.
But that's
Pre England or France being their
before
own thing.
before William came, England was just those. It was a few. It was like Wessex and East Anglia. It was a bunch of states basically, and the Vikings had been destroying them for like 300 years, just taking over it. And
but that's where you get like shit, piss, cunt, cock, and that's the slang, the
Norman.
bad swear words, and then other stuff is defecate, urinate.
oh,
Well, those come from
Latin.
Yeah, those come from
They
Latin.
sound like Latin. to
no,
me.
right, but the Normans, their language had derived from that as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, Norman language was from Latin for sure. Totally, yeah. So what else, guys? Anything else? We're past our time. We got to give it a.
Rousey. Were you saying anything about that?
Ronda. I was disappointed. Everyone was like really lording it over her. It was just another thing like
Yeah.
Paris. It was just, oh, this is what you get, bitch. Just because she like got a little mouthy in the weigh-ins, like, is that such a big deal for UFC? It's entertainment. They all like,
Well, I think it's like the secret knowledge thing. Everyone wants to believe that they are an expert.
Oh, they all
and
called
they
it.
know.
They
Yeah, they
all
all knew.
called it.
It was time for her to get beat.
And they always connect the
and
fact
they're
that
sick of her. They were sick of her. And
well, first of all, they say they called it, and I'm like, I bet you did. I'm sure you're not blatantly lying. But how many of her previous fights did you call that she would get knocked out?
well,
in?
and also if you
And
called
we're wrong.
if you called it and you knew it was going to happen, why did you not bet any money on it? in
Yeah,
Vegas?
yeah.
Because you'd be a rich person now.
Yeah,
If
I know
you
one
called
guy.
it and just
I know one
spent
guy who
even
did
$20
bet on it, and he won. Yeah, but
It's like
everyone else,
1,200 to 1.
it was like 20 to 1. Yeah,
No, it was more than that.
nothing's 1,200 in sports. It was like, but it was a huge thing.
This was, and this
Yeah.
is why it happened too.
Yeah.
Because they cleaned up.
A lot of people made a lot of money.
She's
lot
gonna
of
pay
people
for.
bet
She's
on
gonna pay
Rousey.
for her trip to the edge of the plate.
But this, but this is like an irrational thing. People say I called it, and then they talk about how she was not humble the night before, and I'm like, but that has nothing to do with why she lost. So why are you even connecting?
Well,
those two things?
I think it did. I don't think humble, but I think she did go into the fight more emotional than other times. I think that affected her performance. I think also Holm was just stronger and faster. And I think another
What I
but
hate is that
explanation
there's-
is Rousey didn't do her typical thing. She tried to stand up and box
Yeah.
with her too much.
Wanted to
If she tried
Yeah.
to, she just attempted her normal routine.
she did
I think
attempt a
might
few
have-
takedowns, right?
just a couple though.
And
She
she did-
stood up for the majority of the thing.
She tried
and
to
even,
armbar
and
her, and
that's why I
Holmes
said
stood
even,
up, right?
Well, and that's why I said strength and speed, because when the couple times she did try to do it, Holmes threw her off,
Got
and
it,
then she
stood up.
stopped. And so she kind of backed away from doing that and tried to just like box with her. It's like,
Yeah, not yeah.
As
and I'm saying that not as I don't think I would win in a fight against Rousey.
No,
so
yeah,
I'm not an expert. I don't fucking know.
but in terms of the
no.
humbleness thing, though, it's funny. We both lionize people who are extra arrogant,
Yeah.
but then as soon as they have a misstep, we enjoy
Yes,
tearing them down.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's
What
that
happened
has its
to
roots.
that Irish guy.
That
What's
has
his
its
name
roots
again?
in trial.
The little Irish guy who's the best middleweight right now.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's gonna love it when he loses. Just like they would love it if Mayweather lost. Everyone.
Well, and then the other thing is, like, even if she did lose and whatever, she's still the reason. I mean, and this goes towards why she maybe is not humble and whatever. She's the reason that there were two. That the main fight was a woman's fight last night.
Totally.
I mean, she's the reason you see women fighting on UFC.
Listen,
at all.
she's the highest paid UFC fighter. Put a period at the end of that sentence. I didn't say female. She's the highest paid.
There's a history of trial by combat. As societally, we've always linked success and athleticism with moral success. Unfortunately, since that's nonsense, there's always been a
There's a big
dichotomy
Greek
there,
thing.
and I think that's why we have such a big thing. That's why when you've got somebody talking about floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee, and being all arrogant about it, as long as he's winning, everyone's behind him. But then you got somebody like Ronda Rousey, and she's arrogant, and you'll have some people beforehand saying it, but then as soon as she loses, it's it's because she was not she wasn't humble. What a bitch, and
and it was just a flash of arrogance too. She's not an arrogant fighter. She's not one
that
of the
doesn't matter.
classic shit talkers.
It's not the
She's-
issue.
Well, like I said, I don't think
Normal.
like not touching gloves. That didn't come off as arrogant
Oh,
to
did
me.
she do that?
She didn't touch gloves with Holmes
Oh.
at the beginning of that fight, and that was from. It was all a weird thing because the night before with the weigh-ins, when like they went to square off and have pictures taken, like Rousey like really got in her face,
Yeah.
and then
Talk
and,
shit.
And Holmes, was she drunk? Because Rousey got in her face, and Holmes kind of like
put her fist
her fist like in her face and kind of like
touched her.
yeah, touched her, or kind of pushed
You're
back.
not supposed to do
or
that.
something. And then they almost, went to blows, or whatever. But then after, when they were talking to Holm, they asked her like what that was all about, and she was like, she was kind of almost slurring her words, and she said something about I had a drink before.
She did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
She
weird.
said something like that. So I was like, what? Like, wait.
Why would
And
she
then
have a
was-
drink before weigh-ins?
I don't
like,
know.
That's
It
when you
was-
don't drink anything.
Or I wanted to have a drink, or I'm going to have a drink.
no, maybe she's
Said something
punchy, man. These
I don't-
fighters get hurt in the head.
also if it's right before a weigh-in, she may not.
You
blood
might be
sugar.
dehydrated.
Yeah, no,
Blood
I
sugar
don't know, but that just seemed weird. And then Rousey not touching gloves with her, and like I said, that seemed less arrogant and more just like emotionally, she was too pissed. You know what I mean? Like she was like,
Yeah, it was odd. I don't know. She did seem to lose her composure somewhat, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm sad she won, but may the best woman win, and I guess that's what
yeah,
happened.
and like I said,
But, a big
there's
reason
going to
that
be a rematch now.
a lot of
You know
people
there's
are
gonna be a
Even that
rematch.
rejoicing.
phrasing, even that phrasing though. May the best man or woman win.
It's a truism, because whoever wins is the best.
Only depending on what
Well-
you mean by the phrase. best.
Well, but
the one who wins.
Well, but also that you would even say man in that sentence because we're talking about two female fighters. There's no man.
I said woman.
Okay.
You said man or woman, but the point being that when we talk about
you
best,
got PC on me when I went to great lengths to be PC.
But we
I
don't
know,
say
but you shouldn't be PC. If it's just two girls fighting, two women fighting, may the best woman win.
That's what I said. I thought.
Right, the best man at a wedding. The best man at a wedding is not the best fighter. We don't say may the best fighter win, may the best footballer win. No, it's not. It's the same formulation. To get back to Wittgenstein, I think it comes
language game. You can use the same phrase.
Correct.
Well,
but in terms of what it connotes, when you're saying the best man, when we were talking about how people were upset she wasn't humble or whatever, it's like, she thought she was the best, but she's not.
Right.
Well, but then also you can go even further with that and say he's saying may the best whatever win. He's not saying they are going to win.
Yeah, I hope they do.
He's not saying the best man will win.
It doesn't make any sense, honestly.
May the odds ever be in your favor.
I also think there's a bit of anti-jiu-jitsu.
Shakespeare invented that phrase.
UFC?
No, may the best man win.
Yeah, he probably freaking did.
It's not in your list?
I'm not going to look it up again.
Come on.
I think there's some anti-jiu-jitsu bias out there too. All these guys that grew up with boxing and they just
definitely
hate these grapplers and they want a boxer to knock them out with a punch or a kick, and that is just a vindication that this
in the audience
this jiu-jitsu and on Facebook this jiu-jitsu bullshit doesn't really work. And if someone tried to take me down, man, I would just sidestep them, dude. And if they did take me down, I'd get up. We should have thought about that in jiu-jitsu when we trained how to keep you down for 9 years. Well, we should have thought about the fact that you would try to get up.
Did you see any of the stuff from Mayweather's camp before pre-fight and post-fight?
No, I'm sure he was happy as fuck.
Well, no, and a lot of people were like, Holmes, she's a boxer and she's had a bunch of good fights and she's going to take her. And then after it was totally like, yeah, see, this proves that Mayweather would have kicked that bitch's ass.
Yeah, I know.
Like, she couldn't have gone rounds with Mayweather. She couldn't go rounds with Holmes.
Doesn't prove anything.
Mayweather would have kicked her ass.
Mayweather has no idea how to defend his legs or a takedown. No idea.
Though, to be fair, as far as I understand it, Mayweather's pretty good at hitting women.
And on that note, all right, guys, thank you so much. We'll be back next time. I didn't get to cover everything, but we're going to talk about the origins of early Christianity and the Nag Hammadi library, the Gospel of Thomas. I'll leave you.
So make sure you stay tuned for that.
I think we can make it interesting. All right. Maybe I shouldn't have advertised that. I'll end with a quote from the Gospel of Thomas.
We're also going to talk about what Miley Cyrus is doing.
Chapter 29. No, I'm not going to end it.
Do what? A Bible verse?
Yeah, but not the real Bible, the Apocrypha.
One of the
Apocryphal secret Gospels. Knowledge.
Yes. The Gnostic secret knowledge. All right, guys. It was great. I had a great time, and we're going to see you next week for episode 37. And have a nice day.
We're going to be naked.
As always.